started with a fog. Not silence, not calm, but a tension you could feel in the air. October 6, 2025, 8:42 a.m. Two Russian Su-34 bombers roared down the runway at Morozovsk Air Base, their engines howling through the mist. Their mission, simple on paper, devastating in practice, hit Ukraine's energy heart, the power grids that kept cities alive, hospitals running, and entire regions lit. But what no one knew that morning was this. In just 14 minutes, every decision, every radar ping, and every heartbeat would decide whether millions faced darkness or defiance. The jets climbed fast, slicing through the clouds, their wings heavy with precision Kb-500 bombs, each one strong enough to tear apart a substation or flatten an energy cluster. They carried self-defense missiles too, but this wasn't a dogfight. This was a strike run, fast, focused, and cold. Down below, Ukraine's radar network stirred awake. Screens flickered, operators leaned forward, their eyes tracing faint returns from the east. The kind of readings that could change a day or start a crisis. And here's the twist, these weren't ordinary blips. Something about their speed, their angle, the way they moved, it felt intentional. Coordinated. Deadly. That's when the quiet confidence of the pilots collided with the unseen calm of the defenders. Because while the Su-34s believed they were flying clean, the sky above Ukraine was already alive. Alive with sensors, data, and silent watchmen waiting for one signal. Fire. This wasn't just another air raid. It was the start of a 14-minute chess match between steel, signal, and human instinct. Every second mattered. Every radar pulse was a move. And as the countdown began, one question hovered in the cold October air. Could Ukraine's technology and nerve outsmart Russia's ruthless strike before it reached the lights of a nation? But the story doesn't end in the clouds. Because what happened next turned two blips on a screen into the most important 14 minutes of the war. 8 minutes later, one radar operator spotted something no one expected. Two ghosts streaking toward the heart of Ukraine. 8 minutes after takeoff, the hunt began. Somewhere above Donetsk, two faint returns flashed across Ukraine's regional radar screen. Tiny arcs of light moving fast and low. To most, they looked like noise. To trained eyes, they screamed danger. Inside a mobile radar truck, operators locked in. Two contacts, bearing 274. Speed rising. The call went out. A chain reaction started. In command centers from Dnipro to Zaporizhia, alert codes flashed red. Analysts confirmed it wasn't a drill, it was a strike run. And the targets weren't random. These bombers were headed for Ukraine's energy lifelines, the grid hubs of Kryvyi Rih and Dnipro. Those two cities powered millions. Their substations fed hospitals, communication networks, and military supply lines. Take them out, and Ukraine's infrastructure would stumble overnight. The Su-34s carried a brutal mix of precision weapons. 2 Kb-500 guided bombs, each roughly 1,100 pounds of pure destruction. Short-range R-73 air-to-air missiles for self-defense. Extended drop tanks for extra range, giving them the reach to strike deep and escape fast. Every gauge in the cockpit glowed steady green. To the pilots, everything looked normal. No warnings, no threats. They trusted their route, one mapped by Russian planners to avoid active radar zones. But on the ground, Ukraine's defenders weren't sitting still. They had learned the rhythm of these raids, how Russia disguised its flights, how their signals pulsed between blind spots. This time, the defenders didn't wait for missiles to fall. They were building something else, a trap. Behind the cold glow of monitors, commanders plotted intercept lines, calculated altitude windows, and fed coordinates into the Patriot and IRIS-T systems already in motion. They had one advantage the Su-34s didn't: information. Every radar ping, every fragment of radio chatter, every commercial satellite feed, fused into a single, fast-moving picture. In that instant, the war wasn't fought with bullets or bombs. It was fought with data. And as the clock ticked toward 8:50 a.m., one radar operator whispered the words everyone had been waiting for. Targets confirmed. They're coming straight for us. That confirmation set off a chain reaction. one that would turn quiet radar screens into the deadliest trap of the war. 8:50 a.m. The moment silence cracked. A strange shimmer pulsed across Ukraine's radar grid. At first, it was faint, almost invisible. But within seconds, it grew into two sharp echoes. Fast, deliberate, unmistakable. Two Su-34s. Heading west. Low altitude. Full speed. Inside a mobile 3D radar post near Donetsk, the 80K-6M array spun, painting their trail in amber light. Operators froze for a heartbeat, then snapped to life. Two high-speed tracks detected. Bearing 274. Those words traveled through encrypted channels like sparks down a wire. Within seconds, the alert hit Ukraine's Air Defense Command network. And here's where it gets interesting. Instead of blasting their radars in full emission, the defenders chose whispers over shouts. They switched to ping scans, short bursts of radar just long enough to confirm a reading, then silence. Why? Because constant emissions could expose their position, letting Russian systems lock on and destroy them. It was a deadly game of hide and seek, one where staying invisible was survival. In under 2 minutes, 5 separate intelligence feeds synced up, ground radar plots, auxiliary sensors from backup stations, satellite imagery from allies, real-time observer reports, civil communication intercepts. Together, they painted one terrifying picture. 2 bombers flying a clean, calculated line straight toward Ukraine's central power web. Commanders made the call. Do not reveal. Stay dark. Collect. Confirm. Prepare ambush. Outside, in the cold mist of Zaporizhia, mobile launchers began to move, steel giants rolling into position like chess pieces. Soldiers worked in silence, guided only by soft radio whispers. Above them, the sky looked calm. But below, every second was a countdown, a race between detection and destruction. Each radar ping risked exposure. Each silence risked losing the track. And somewhere far above, the Su-34 pilots still believed they were ghosts, unseen, untouchable. They couldn't have been more wrong. Because in just 14 minutes, Ukraine would fuse every signal, every sensor, and every ounce of courage into a perfect ambush. They had exactly 14 minutes. Not forever. Not even a long minute. 14 small windows of time to turn scattered signals into a lethal decision. Inside the control room, displays were a waterfall of numbers. Telemetry feeds blinked, commercial images arrived, and radio reports stitched themselves into a single map. Operators fed fixes into the fire control chain, each update shaving uncertainty. Every new data point changed the picture, sometimes subtly, sometimes like a door slamming shut. The commander watched the clock and mouthed the word nobody wanted to hear. Wait. That single order was everything. Reveal the radar now and risk the station, or stay quiet and risk the target slipping away. That calculus lived at the edge of every operator's breath. They repositioned 2 air defense batteries into gateway slots, choke points where the Su-34s would be forced to fly into sight. Patriot launchers rolled into place. IRIS-T crews readied interceptors. Mobile radars crept to pre-planned hides, pinging only long enough to confirm track quality, then going dark. The plan was simple and savage. Lure, verify, strike. Risk wasn't theoretical. Each ping could be geolocated. Each delay could mean bombs falling on hospitals and grid hubs. So they layered caution with speed. 5 independent channels of information converged simultaneously. Operators argued in clipped tones, double-checked math, and pushed updates that revised firing windows by seconds. On the pilot side, mission briefings still promised corridor safety. On Ukraine's side, human fingers and steel met in a moment of synthesis. Sensors, software, and judgment fused into one decision. When the order finally came, it wasn't sudden. It was earned, a cascade of proof, timing, and trust in the data. 14 minutes of tension snapped into motion. Then the sky exploded into motion. 8 interceptors climbed, and the hunt became visible. The countdown hit 0 and the sky answered. 9:06. Commands went out like gunfire through wires. Weapons hot. Track all. Launch. From 2 gateway positions, Dnipro and Zaporizhia, tubes opened and 8 interceptors tore upward. for from each sight, they leapt like iron javelins, vapor trails burning through low fog. The mist that morning turned from veil to battlefield. Inside the Su-34 cockpits, tiny symbols fluttered on glass. Warning tones that had been whispers became loud and insistent. Pilots saw lock cycling. Heat-seekers painted points where flares might help. Flares spilled from pylons, bright, fluttering decoys meant to fool hungry seekers. Chaff rattled the air like silver rain. On the ground, missile crews watched telemetry climb. Missiles streaked toward predicted intercept corridors, guided by fused radar tracks and split-second math. This wasn't guesswork. It was trajectory sculpting, seconds carved away to line and intercept at the exact altitude and angle. The lead Su-34 hit first. Bright, sudden, impossible to ignore. A ball of fire that opened like a bad wound in the sky. Metal and flame sprayed fields below. The second jet, trailing smoke, tried to claw for control. It spun, losing speed, before slamming into the outskirts of Zaporizhia. Silence followed the blast like a heavy blanket. Then radios filled with shocked breaths, unanswered check-ins, and static. On one end, Mission Control stared at blank returns where 2 aircraft had been. On the other, Ukrainian commanders exchanged a look that meant everything had worked, and nothing felt simple. There was no cheering. There was no triumph. Only the cold tally of outcomes. 1 aircraft vaporized in midair, 1 downed on the ground, the planned strike aborted. Yet the simplest fact remained. A calculated web of sensors and timing had transformed a deep strike into a failed raid. But with victory came costs, civilian alarms, emergency evacuations, and the fragile calculus of escalation. Within minutes the ripple spread. Sorties canceled. Hospitals shifted to backup power, and a single morning turned into a national emergency. For a moment it seemed over. But in war, over doesn't exist. Within minutes of the Su-34s going down, the ripples tore across command networks. Russian strike packages rerouted. Support aircraft turned back. Communications between Morozovsk and Rostov went into blackout. What had started as a precision strike mission now became a search and recovery scramble. On the Ukrainian side, the reaction was split, half relief, half dread. The power grid crews in Dnipro and Kryvyi Rih stayed at their stations, waiting for impact reports that never came. But air raid sirens wailed anyway, echoing through empty streets, as civilians ducked into basements, unaware the threat had already fallen from the sky. Fire teams near Zaporizhia found twisted wreckage hours later. Scorched panels, scattered flares, and fragments of Russian avionics. Every shard told a story. Where the radar lock held, where the pilot tried to break free, where the ambush had been absolute. Still, Ukrainian defense analysts knew this success wasn't just about missiles, it was about time. 14 minutes of coordination had flipped the outcome of an entire operation. The lesson spread fast through command circles. Precision and patience could rival even superior hardware. Meanwhile, in Moscow's briefing rooms, silence hung heavy. Official channels called it a technical loss. But insiders knew 2 elite strike jets, gone without even reaching target, meant more than a setback. It was a shift in psychological warfare. For the first time in months, Russian pilots began questioning their flight corridors. And for the first time in weeks, Ukrainian radar operators believed they could outthink their hunters. But as the sun set that evening, something unexpected happened. Intercepted chatter hinted the downed pilots weren't the end of the story. October 7, 2025. Less than 24 hours after the ambush, Ukraine's radar screens lit up again. This time it wasn't bombers. It was drones, dozens of them. Cheap, fast, and relentless. Flying low through the fog, they weren't there to destroy. They were there to hunt. Their mission: find the Patriot and IRIS-T batteries that had taken down the Su-34s. For Russia, this was payback. At 4:13 a.m., a drone swarm breached the Dnipro perimeter. Operators in underground command rooms watched the map flood with red icons. 1, then 5, then 15. All converging on a narrow grid near the outskirts of the city. Switch frequencies. Move the launchers. Now. Orders echoed through encrypted comms. Trucks roared to life, engines growling in the dark. Every second mattered. Radar systems could be tracked by their last ping, and the Russians were tracing every echo. By 4:17, the first wave hit. Not explosives, but jammers. Electronic pulses blinded sensors, froze targeting feeds, and flooded command channels with static. It was digital warfare at its purest. No explosions, just silence. And then, at 4:19, the sky flashed. One of the decoy radars caught a direct hit, a fireball lighting the dawn. But that radar wasn't real. It was a dummy, placed hours earlier to bait incoming strikes. The real systems had already rolled west, hidden beneath civilian power lines. When the smoke cleared, Russia had destroyed metal and paint. But Ukraine's real defenses remained untouched. Still, everyone in the control room knew what it meant. The battle had evolved. No longer just about missiles or jets. It was now about data, deception, and who could outthink the other faster. But as Ukraine defended in the shadows, the world began asking, what happens when the line between war and technology disappears? By sunrise on October 7th, the story had already gone global. Satellite images, intercepted radio chatter, and shaky smartphone videos told one chilling truth. Russia's strike failed, and Ukraine's defenses had held. In Washington, analysts pored over radar telemetry. In Berlin, defense ministers called emergency briefings. And in Moscow, silence. No official acknowledgement. No admission of loss. Just state media footage, generic clips of jets taking off recycled from weeks before. But the internet told a different story. Open-source trackers mapped wreckage fields. Independent analysts confirmed the aircraft serial numbers. And within hours, hashtags like #CensorWar and #Battle of 14 Minutes trended worldwide. In Brussels, NATO commanders called the ambush a masterclass in modern defense. Not brute force, but brainpower. The age of radar, AI fusion, and split-second data had taken center stage. Yet not everyone saw it as victory. At the UN, diplomats warned of escalation. Each radar ping, each missile launch, risked dragging new players into the conflict. And behind closed doors, energy markets trembled. Oil futures spiked. Gas contracts surged. Every investor knew, if Ukraine's grid went dark, Europe would feel the chill. But amid the politics and panic, one truth cut through. A nation under siege had outsmarted one of the world's biggest air forces. Not through numbers, but through information. For the first time, the world realized that wars were no longer fought just with weapons, but with sensors, signals, and seconds. And as the footage looped on global news, one phrase echoed online. 14 minutes changed everything. But deep inside Ukraine's defense command, the mood wasn't celebration, it was worry. Because they knew Russia would learn and come back harder. Inside Ukraine's defense command, the air was thick with tension, not triumph. Screens still glowed with static, the smell of burnt circuits and coffee hanging in the room. Yes, they'd won. 2 Su-34s down. But everyone in that room knew what came next. Russia doesn't absorb hits quietly. When its bombers fall, retaliation follows. Fast and brutal. Commanders moved like ghosts through the hallways. No celebration. No speeches. Just orders, reinforce radar grids, rotate frequencies, shift batteries west. Every system that had lit up during the ambush was now a potential target. In Dnipro, technicians worked sleepless, patching up radar vans with spare circuits. In Zaporizhia, Patriot crews reloaded, knowing their location might already be compromised. The soldiers joked bitterly, "We showed our cards. Now let's see how long we can keep the deck." Intelligence streams were pouring in. Satellite sweeps showed movement near Morozovsk again. Hangar doors sliding open, refueling trucks rolling out. It looked like a second wave. But this time, Ukraine wasn't just defending, it was predicting. AI-assisted radar mapping began to model likely flight paths. Civilian weather stations quietly fed data into the network. Even cell phone towers became part of a digital shield, tracking anomalies in the air. Every second, the line between soldier and system blurred. This wasn't just a war of firepower anymore. It was a war of calculation, prediction, and trust. And yet, in all the silence and preparation, a chilling question lingered. Had Ukraine's success in those 14 minutes awakened something far more dangerous? In the end, what happened on October 6, 2025, wasn't just another clash in the sky. It was a turning point in how wars are fought, and how they're won. 2 Russian Su-34s took off expecting dominance. But in just 14 minutes, Ukraine turned technology, timing, and pure nerve into an invisible weapon. It wasn't the missiles that changed the balance. It was the data, the discipline, the decision-making under fire. Those 14 minutes reshaped doctrine. Across the world, generals rewrote their manuals. Analysts called it the sensor revolution. Because in that short window, Ukraine proved one truth. The fastest weapon isn't the jet, it's the brain behind the radar. But the story doesn't end here. Every new strike, every countermeasure, every flash on the radar carries the same haunting question. When machines decide faster than humans can think, who really controls the battlefield? That's the world we're entering, one where war is fought in data streams and milliseconds. And every command could change history. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told truthfully and fearlessly, hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and help us keep uncovering the moments that shape modern warfare. Because this isn't just a story about 2 down jets. It's about the future of conflict, and the people brave enough to face it.